Welcome to the Blending Worlds podcast, where identity and psychology meet across cultures. Tune into a new podcast every week. Welcome back to the second episode of the Blending Worlds podcast. My name is Reese and I am your host. Today's podcast, I'm going to be getting a little personal, and today's topic is being caught in between two cultures. So earlier this year, I was having a conversation with someone that migrated to the US as a young child. He mentioned that he never really felt like he fully belonged in either cultures, and my response was, that's the immigrant struggle. And definitely, based on a lot of the conversations that I've had with a lot of people who were either first-gen immigrants or second-gen immigrants, that was their lived experience. But before I get into some of these stories and even some studies on this, I want to share my own personal story. So now, this is something that I've never publicly talked about on the internet at all. This is also something that I don't usually talk about in my personal life, unless you're someone that's pretty close to me. But it's a story that I feel like it's definitely time to share. So I migrated to the US when I was 7, and it was definitely a roller coaster. Leaving behind my past life, my school life, my friendships was definitely not easy. And not only did I have to adjust to a new way of life, but I also had to adjust to new cultural norms, a new education system. And I also went from being in a predominantly mostly black country where everyone looked like me to being around people who didn't. And I think this is something that a lot of Americans don't really think much about, because we definitely live in a very heterogeneous culture where we have so many different people from so many different backgrounds. And that's definitely something that I've grown to admire living in the US, because I think it's not something that a lot of people think much about, because the rest of the world is definitely not as diverse as the US. The rest of the world definitely can be very homogeneous. Moving to the US, something as simplistic as greeting people when you see them was something that I didn't realize wasn't very common everywhere I went in the US. I remember growing up, I would enter into a store with my sister and immediately we would say good morning, hello, and I'll always remember the store clerks and the cashiers would always look at my mom and be like, oh my goodness, your children are so well mannered, they're saying good morning. And we would always be so confused, because growing up, that was the cultural norm in Jamaica. We were taught from a young age, when you see someone, you acknowledge their presence and you say good morning, or you say good afternoon, or you say good evening, or you say hello. And that was definitely something that I also experienced as an adult when I went to Jamaica a few years ago. I remember we were visiting some family, and there was a school that was pretty close to where this family member lived, and we were just sitting waiting on a taxi, and literally there were these school age kids that were walking by, and they literally were good evening, good afternoon, they definitely were good afternoon, good evening, and we said it back. And I remember turning to my sister and I was see, that's just the cultural norm in Jamaica. In Jamaica, it was definitely seen as disrespectful if you didn't say hello or good morning or acknowledge someone's presence. But I didn't realize that in the US, it's often seen as being overly friendly or overly nice. And I remember my freshman year of college, I was literally known in my dorm as the girl that was always cooking jerk chicken in the kitchen and the girl that was always saying hi to everybody. I remember at first, when I first moved into my dorm, it was an immediate reaction to me to, of course, when I see one of my neighbors walking in the hallway, to say hello or good morning or to just acknowledge them. And I'll never forget, there were a few times where the girls kind of seemed kind of confused. Like, they were like, why is she saying hi to us? And I remember even, like, there would be a few times I would be walking down the staircase on the way to class, and I would see someone, I'd be like, hi, or hello, and they would just look at me and keep walking. And I remember realizing, like, oh, I guess I'm the overly friendly one, but to me, it was a cultural norm that I grew up on, because I was just always raised that when you see someone, you acknowledge their presence and you say hello. But getting back to being caught in between cultures and not feeling like you belong to either culture, this is definitely something that a lot of people experience, and a lot of people that I've spoken to that are from immigrant backgrounds or from different cultural backgrounds can definitely relate to. Even feeling like you don't really belong to either culture, and that both cultures in a way kind of look at you differently, kind of like other you, like you're not like fully American, but you're also like not fully Jamaican either. And that was something that, like I said, I've met a lot of people that they experienced that, but that was also something that was my personal experience. I even remember like being in high school and having a conversation with someone that was like a friend of mine that also grew up from like an immigrant family as well. Her family was Haitian, and I remember that she would often say that a lot of Haitians didn't perceive her as Haitian because she wasn't born in Haiti, but she grew up speaking Haitian Creole. She grew up listening to Haitian music, and she grew up eating like a lot of Haitian food, like griot. So it was like she was fully immersed in a culture, but she was also kind of seen as like othered. And that was even like a conversation I remember having with her. Even going back to research studies, there have been like a ton of research studies that have been conducted on this very like topic and conversation, and what they found was that a lot of first generation immigrants often do feel that being caught in between two worlds, with a lot of first gens having like stronger ties to their heritage culture. Although, like, what I've seen in personal experience, that typically fades as they get older. Research also found that a lot of second generation immigrants, like children of immigrant parents, were more likely to be socially integrated and to identify as either bicultural or American. Like, they were more likely to feel more immersed in both cultures and to have that stronger sense of their identity. Studies have also shown that many first generation children carry a lot more mental health strain from the feeling of being caught in between two cultures, and even having a level of familial conflict over certain values due to that. And I just wanted to end this podcast just giving out some advice to anyone out there that does feel caught in between two cultures. And that's the simple fact that you're not alone. And I know that's really cliche, but a lot of immigrants or people from immigrant families definitely experience this as well. And I know when you're feeling that conflict and that internal conflict, but also that social conflict, it can feel really hard and feel like, oh my goodness, like I'm the only one experiencing this, especially because there aren't a lot of open conversations about this online. Or if you're in a certain area where there aren't a lot of immigrants, it's not something that you feel like your friends or your peer group can relate to. But you're not alone. There are other people out there that 100% know what you're experiencing and can relate to that. And I would also advise them that you cultivate your identity, not society. I actually remember last year having a conversation with a mentor, and she told me something that I honestly found so life-changing. She said, you get to choose which parts of your culture that you want to identify as and which parts you don't. Like, you get to choose your identity. Other people do not get to choose that for you. So regardless of whether you're not seen fully as this or you're not seen fully as that, or whether you're not living up to certain familial standards or societal standards, and you're feeling that pressure, like, your identity is what you cultivate your identity to be. You get to choose. And that is something that I find so empowering and something that I take with me each and every day. I just want to thank each and every person for listening to this podcast. If you really enjoyed this podcast, please give it a thumbs up. Please share it on your social media platforms, and you can tag me on Instagram or TikTok. If you would also like, you can leave a review of this podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will definitely see you guys for the new podcast next week. Bye.